Sweet. Hey, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the November edition of the Audio Programmer Meetup. And this is a place where we come normally every second Tuesday of the month, but this time it's going to be the first Tuesday since I'm on vacation next week in Europe and gearing up for the Audio Developer Conference that's happening in London later on this month. So I have some fantastic guests with me. I have Simone Capitani from Audio Modeling. I have Bobby Lombardi and Ralph Richburg from the ADC team, and Aaron Leese from Stagecraft software. So we have some great discussions today about accessibility, about the Audio Developer Conference, and about debugging, both basic and advanced techniques. So before we get started, just wanted to let you know about our audio programming community on Discord. So this is a place where audio developers all around the world of all ages can join up and help each other out and essentially help grow with each other. And you can join us on the audioprogrammer.com/community. And before we started, just wanted to make one more announcement about something really interesting that's just been announced. So if you're active on Twitter, you may be aware that that Cycling 74, Max MSP, have just announced their project called Rainbow. So if you're aware of Rainbow, then you would know that or aware of Cycling 74 and Max MSP, you may be aware that one of the challenges that Max MSP has had in the past is being able to take the work that you do at Max MSP and export it out to other places. So wrapping it into a VST or an audio unit or putting it onto a piece of hardware. And so this new project Rainbow is a project they've been working on for a couple of years that allows you to do that. And they've just announced it within the past hour. And we're happy to also announce that we've teamed up with Music Hackspace, and we will be having a workshop with them that will be talking about Rainbow. So we'll be having a tutorial that will be coming out tomorrow at this time. And then within that tutorial, we'll also be talking about a workshop that we'll be doing together that will help you get through Rainbow and learn some of the basics of how to start creating your own plugins. And you can also take Max MSP code and also put it on the web as well, because it exports to WebAssembly. And you could also take it and prototype projects and actually export it into a Juice project as well. So there are a lot of exciting capabilities that are coming along with this. So join us tomorrow. I will be announcing the tutorial video on our socials, and we're looking forward to seeing what possibilities this brings to audio music technology. So with that, I'll go ahead and segue into our first speaker. So our first speaker is Simone Capitani, and he is a partner at Audio Modeling who also leads the user experience. And he has a lot of experience in the industry, and he had some fantastic ideas about accessibility. So he's here with us today to talk about some of his ideas around accessibility and musical instruments. And with that, I will hand it to you, Simone.
Thank you very much, Josh. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you also for the opportunity to talk about accessibility. First of all, I would like to say that we recently started at Audio Modeling to work at accessibility. And what we are trying to do now is to open a discussion and sharing our first thought about what we have seen just starting recently. So if there are accessibility experts, don't kill me if you hear something that could sound a bit strange in terms of that lacks of experience. But as a user experience design, a designer, I just realized and wrote down some ideas. And the goal today is also to start a discussion and also to continue the discussion with many people in the industry, and also having the possibility to meet for those who will come to the ADC in London at the accessibility booth, because we want to learn more accessibility and do more. So this is the goal of this discussion. And what I would like to discuss is the experience that we had introducing the compatibility with of our products with screen readers. And the question is here is if you want to use a screen reader, or do you need to use a screen reader? I mean, would you like to use a screen reader if you don't need to? Maybe not, because the experience of using any product with the use of a screen reader is not the best experience that you can have with a product. The screen reader is a great value, but it is a fix. So what we would like to discuss is to rethink the experience from the beginning, removing barriers as much as we can. So we don't want to add fixes, but we want to think about something that can be used by everyone, and that everyone could be happy to use. The example that I like to provide is the self-driving cars. A self-driving car can be used by people that can drive, cannot drive, or that have a driving license or not, I don't know, for any reason. Maybe you can usually drive a car, but sometimes you cannot drive, or you don't want to drive. And the experience is the same for people that can use the self-driving car because they cannot drive. But everyone has the same approach. So we should try to find a way to use music software, music products, in general, any kind of digital products with the same experience. If we think about the current technology, we have screen readers, voice commands, that are tools with a good value, but they are complex to use. They require training, they require expert skills, and they require a setup at the beginning. The idea is that if the current tools can help a lot of people that are in the expert condition, in the expert status, like if let's say when everyone of us is using a digital product, usually is for the most of the time is in the intermediate condition status. Then the more he or she uses a product, then you start to learn keyboard shortcuts, you learn deeper features, and then you go and you shift to the expert side. But this condition is not permanent. If you don't use the product for a while, you easily come back to the intermediate condition. Also, if the product receives updates, changes a little bit the UI, or changes a little bit the features, you need to learn a little bit more the product. So now actually the idea that we had facing the use of screen reader is that you need to develop a lot of skills, and you have a steep learning curves. We don't have, of course, the solution, and we don't. Maybe it would sound a bit ambitious, but the challenge is that we need to build an ecosystem that starts from the operating system, the development frameworks. By the way, you know, at the modeling we are using Juice for all our products development. Vocal system like Siri, Amazon, Alexa, Google. Vocal assistant can here we go with Alexa in my room. MIDI 2.0 as well can provide new tools for this kind of ecosystem. Also, API that can help digital products to provide information about the use of the products, musical information about what you play, and new products and new services that starts keeping in mind a different way and a different approach to build an experience that everyone can use. So we focused on visual impairments, disabilities, but there are so many reasons why anyone could not use a music product or any digital product. So we would like to start a discussion with the MI players to build maybe a working group, to start an activity to build not only products that are only accessible but inclusive, and create the same experience, almost the same experience for everyone. So basically, this is the idea that is bringing us to the ADC this year. We would like to discuss and speak about this topic. We want to learn more about the challenges. We know that people that are working on accessibility for many years could say, okay, here he comes with this speech, but there are a lot of problems to face. So we know that there is always a good reason because we are here at this status. But we think that we should at least try to think a little bit out of the box and start this process.
Thank you very much, Simone. That's fantastic. So, so can you give some? I'd be curious to hear some ideas on where you think the starting point for this would be for us. Like in an ideal scenario, where do you think that?
Yeah, well. We think that we should try to build a working group to discuss the best technology and to plan the step of an ambitious project. And only with people coming from the different companies in the MI, but also involving the big companies like Apple, like Google, that Microsoft, that can give their the operating system is the place where we build on top of that. So if we don't have the support and we don't have a discussion, so we would like to do that. Could you please provide us the tools to build this experience? We need to have the discussion with those companies, as well with the development framework that is also in the middle between the operating system and the developers. So I would say building a working group and try to work on a concept of the first experience. What we have in mind, I just mentioned the vocal assistants. So think about the possibility of building a project in a DAW without using the graphical user interface, but just using your voice and speaking in the most natural language, like you could do with another human in a studio, for example, to your sound engineer, to the producer, that you say, okay, I would like to make a song using an acoustic guitar and the bass and the drum, and then automatically it will build a project in any kind of DAW with 3 tracks. And then you can say, okay, I would like to start with maybe a template with this chord progression, and then moving forward. With the use then of the AI, that will be more and more refined. So we could also reach the goals that we could not imagine. Like, let's say, could you make that sound a little bit brighter? A bright or dark sound is not a very accurate definition. So it would be extremely interesting, because people, when speak with humans, we know that make that sound a little bit brighter. So we could achieve that. We can try to move in that direction, working with machines.
I mean, it sounds very much, in my opinion, like an intersection with the work that's happening in the visual media creative space, where you look at something like DALL-E, where you're describing a behavior to an algorithm, and then what it's doing is it's giving you several responses, or it's giving you a response back. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that it would be great to see something like that for the happening in audio. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I think that it's difficult to reach that goal immediately, but maybe what we could do is to make, let's say, the voice command a little bit more human, more friendly, with an easier way to learn that, how to use them, and how to set up, let's say, a voice command. So we have to imagine, we need to be on the same page with the vision, and then start prototyping and iterating.
Yeah. We had a question from the community from James Pike, who asks, what do you see are some of the current pain points for screen readers?
Well, the screen readers are, how can I say, the screen readers are tools that we have to use, because we don't have anything better than that. The problem is that I tried to use the screen reader, and I said it's very difficult. It's not fair that someone has to use a product in that way. Of course, if you cannot use that, is amazing, because it gives you the access to a product, to a feature, and can be extremely important. But now is not enough, because we have seen that there is a technology that is capable to do better.
Mhm.
I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you have. And I was wondering, because if I remember correctly, audio modeling uses Juice. Have you had a moment to, have you had any time to check out the accessibility features in Juice? And I was just wondering what your experience with those has been so far, and areas that you thought were great and areas that you thought could be improved.
Yeah, well, I'm not the developer that worked on the accessibility feature of Juice, but I can say that when we started the process, also we provide feedbacks to the Juice team, asking new features, and also help and support to improve the experience. I cannot go into details because I'm not the right person, but of course at the ADC, Eleonora Dolif, that is our developer that also had the speech last year, will be there, and we will speak about technically how the Juice framework can help, or maybe not, the development of the accessibility feature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. So James just remarked on your response, and he said, it's a translation between two different worlds, auditory to visual. I think I get what you're saying. I agree, if something were designed from the ground up, it would be much better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if we think about the most constrained experience and design from that point of view, then it will be better. It's like when you design a product that is cross-platform. If you start from the most constrained system like an iPhone, and then you scale up, it's much easier to do that than starting from the desktop version and squeeze down.
Fantastic. And we actually got a comment just now from Scott, who says audio modeling's Juice accessibility implementation is covering good ground for screen reader users. So
Thank
some
you.
great compliments on what you've done so far in the area of accessibility. Fantastic job.
Thank you so much.
Great. Well, were there any other remarks that you wanted to make before we wrapped up? It looks like we have we don't have any other questions from our audience there.
Oh, well, as I said, I will be happy also to be in touch with anyone that has ideas. He wants to share vision, also issues. So we are open. We wanted to build a new experience. So it is just the beginning. So feel free to contact me and the team, Simone at audiomodeling.com or info at audiomodeling.com, and just let's start talking about that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Simone.
Thank you.
Great. And speaking of the Audio Developer Conference, we can segue right into that next discussion. So we have the ADC team with us today, Bobby Lombardi and Ralph Richburg, and they're here to talk about the Audio Developer Conference. And you're able to attend both. Well, actually, you're going to be able to attend online. I'll leave the fireworks to Bobby for the big announcement, and they're going to talk to you a little bit about GatherTown, which is a fantastic platform where people can interact, and you'll be able to see the talks as they're happening live. So I will pass the mic over to you, Bobby and Ralph.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, much appreciated. Thanks for having us on today. Yes, so you hinted at it. Yesterday, we did sell out of in-person tickets for the Audio Developer Conference in London, November 14th to the 16th. But That said, it is a hybrid conference and we spend a lot of time on the online experience. And that is what we're here to talk to you today about and show you all the great things that we've built online and ways to network and socialize and really feel like you're part of the conference in a pretty unique and immersive way. Tickets are pretty inexpensive for the online portion. They start at 49 English pound for students and 99 for non-students. So definitely check that out at audio.dev. Yeah, so maybe I'll kick in and just give a couple of words about the conference. I'm assuming that most of your viewers know what the conference is, but I'll just give a couple sound bites that might be interesting, even for those who are familiar with it. This year is the 8th annual conference, and it will again be in London. One year it was online only due to COVID-19, the pandemic, but that was actually incredibly well attended. That would have been ADC 2020, and it was attended by over 900 online participants, which was just absolutely fantastic showing from the community. So let's see. So the conference this year is November 14th to the 16th. And on the 14th, we're bringing back our in-person workshops to the conference. There are 9 events for the workshops. Of those 9, 3 of them will be made available to all of the online attendees. So there will be an opportunity to participate in the workshops for online ticket holders as well. So that's very exciting. If you go to audio.dev, check out the schedule, and you can see information on those 3 workshops. One of those 3, I'll just point out, is a really interesting collaboration with NVIDIA's Deep Learning Institute and GPU Audio. So if you're interested in parallel processing on GPU cores, check out the abstract for that one. That's pretty amazing that that's going to be available online as well. So yeah, and since I mentioned that, I guess I would be remiss not to mention some of my highlights for the conference this year. So we have 2 really interesting keynotes that I think you'll find very entertaining. One is by Astrid Bin, and the title is called "The Musical Instruments of Star Trek." And so check out that abstract. If you are a Star Trek fan, I think you'll be very happy and filled with joy when you see what Astrid has done to recreate these amazing kind of thought-provoking and futuristic instruments that probably weren't ever intended to make sound, but Astrid goes into some discussion about what if they did. And then there's another great keynote by David Zuccarelli of Cycling 74, and a really fun topic called "Incompleteness is a Feature, Not a Bug." And read the abstract there if you're interested in that one. That's also going to be incredibly entertaining and fun. Let's see. I think that's pretty much all I'll say about that. Please join us for the conference. If go to audio.dev, there are, like I said, many online tickets. There is a short waiting list for the in-person tickets, but we actually don't believe many in-person tickets will be made available. So if you are interested in being on that wait list, just direct message us on any of the social platforms related to audio.dev. Often they are Audio Dev Con. So find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and just shoot us a note. I think at this point, I will hand it over to Ralph, who is probably eagerly awaiting for us in the virtual world. And Ralph, I should have mentioned that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do for ADC? Because I feel like you are part of the crew that's almost like Wizard of Oz, kind of the graphics wizard behind
the curtain,
sparkly green curtain. So tell us, dude.
Yeah, I do user interface and graphic design. So so I designed all of the look and feel and layout and everything for ADC. So this is Gathertown. I've been wandering around, kind of showing you. This is the expo hall. And we have all of our sponsors the gold sponsors have booths, and the gold sponsors have the big booths, and the silver sponsors have the regular size booths over here. And what's really cool about this platform is that it allows you to embed information, and so you will see job descriptions from exhibitors, or you will see, let's go wander over here. This is kind of interesting. I ran into Bobby right there. and say you can come over here to Sonics, and you would see videos and demonstrations on their products and that kind of thing, which is kind of cool. You notice that as I get close to Bobby, our videos kind of pop up, and so we're able to communicate and talk to each other. So this simulates what it would be like in a real live kind of conference, where you bump into people, make friends, talk about things, say, hey, what'd you think about this? And there's some private areas where we can go to a table here and have a discussion, where Bobby and whoever else would join us at this table. Looks like those chairs are not part of the, be on the green chair, Bobby. Yeah, there you go. So now it's everyone at this table. So we'll have to fix that. And this is still, we're still tinkering with this to get this up to speed. And this, you just move around on the keyboard using your ASDW keys or your arrow keys. And Bobby likes to dance. It's one of his favorite things to do. And you just hit the Z key. There you go. And there's Lena. She's joining us. And then Bobby's throwing up confetti all over the place. Which key is that? F? Yeah. So that we hit that. But I want to show you this travel system, because this is kind of cool. So I built these little tubes over here. And so you hit this tube and you go inside and you pop into this travel room. And those key commands I just told you about are written over here on the left, so you can remember what they are. But you could just go into any room. So if there's the keynote is on, you're going to want to go into this room in here, and you'll grab a chair anywhere in this room, and you will hit the X key and you will watch the keynote presentation, just like a regular conference. Chairs in the front are all just loose chairs, just like people wandering through. But if you want private chairs, you can come sit over here, and only the green people in the green chairs can talk to each other, which is kind of cool. And then to get back to the expo hall, you come back to the travel room, you go pop into here, and you end up back in going into the expo hall. One cool space that we want to go take a look at is the Cloud Lounge, the iLog sponsored Cloud Lounge. And this takes you to this fun space up on the roof where we have a bunch of games. We have a dance hall. There'll be music playing up here, a little social action, and there will be areas where this is kind of cool. There's a lot of games and things in here. And this brings up a virtual keyboard. It's actually a shared piano where Bobby and I can play at the same time. So Bobby should be able to play as well. Are you smacking keys? I don't know if he is. There he is. So I guess I'm the tiger. Bobby is the panda.
Well, that about explains it all.
I know, they're cool. Let's see, let's get out of there. There's a bunch of different little things, a bunch of little games. There is Lena with the glasses on. Lena's also part of the ADC team.
Yes.
Yeah, she should wave, but
yeah, say hi to Lina. Lina is all things marketing. And I have a hunch that you will see quite a bit of marketing if you haven't already, and all these amazing social campaigns that Lina's put together.
Yeah, this morning I let my daughter run around in here. She's only like 9 years old, and she was running around and she found these games up here. And so she was playing whatever the heck game this is, a Survive or something, whatever this is. So that was kind of fun. I think there's some poker tables down here at the end, just a bunch of fun things. So we're really trying to build a social place where community can be built. Oh yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
That's exactly what you said it, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, Ralph, tell us a little bit about, what you built here, because it really is the purpose that we're trying to create an environment where networking is really front and center. So we realize that when you go to a conference, I would say one of the main reasons for going to a conference in person is you're trying to meet people, make new connections, reestablish old ones. It really is all about expanding your network. And the thinking here was, it's fine to go and sit in a room and watch a talk, or maybe go visit a sponsor, but we really wanted to create these kind of more fun and informal areas to explore, hoping that an online attendee will bump into someone new, say hello, start a new conversation, and then maybe continue that conversation on the Discord server and have a new kind of lifetime community friend.
That's right. Yeah, when we did the online experience in 2020, it was really a magical event, and it was magical because well, we were at the beginning of the pandemic, and nobody was doing anything, physically social, and so it was much needed. Everybody really felt that connection, and so we were amazed at how the audience was so global, and it really connected a lot of people. And so we believe that the online component is very important, and that allows for that kind of connection without the expense of coming here. And we realize that people are busy, and people have families and issues and things that they can't make it to London. And so this is a good way to do that. And you get access to the videos that are presented, or the talks that are presented at ADC, which is, of course, the most important thing. But yeah, Gather Space is a lot of fun. I don't think, I'm going to take a look and see, but I think, yeah, Jim put in here a little puzzle where you have to kind of go through, and I'm not sure this puzzle is completely sussed out yet, but there's going to be a prize or something at the end. But it's a really complicated little maze where you have to kind of navigate around here and figure your way how to get out. And I don't remember, like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
Yeah, sometimes if you test these while they're still in beta, you do end up lost in the metaverse. You got to like respawn yourself, but it's all possible. I wanted to mention quickly, Ralph, that
yes,
you're touching on the concept of the social activities we have planned for the online attendees. Ralph just mentioned these clues and the maze. It's all part of a bigger quiz hunt that's hosted inside of Gather, and pretty much all of our sponsors, and you should check out audio.dev/sponsors, have given us prizes. And many of those are digital redeemable prizes. And if you participate in the quiz hunt, there's a pretty big chance you'll be getting a prize. So that's very exciting. In addition to the quiz hunt, we're also sponsoring an open mic night in the online space as well. And we've got essentially an online ambassador named Oysen Looney, who's going to be giving guided tours of Gather, but also hosting the open mic night on the Tuesday of the conference on the 15th.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Josh, did you play much with this, with the GatherTown stuff? I don't know. Can't recall if you were running around in here last year's Gather.
A little bit. We set up an online space and everything, but we didn't really do a whole lot of interactivity in terms of during the conference, because I was running around the in-person conference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that it was something that several sponsors last year brought up as something that was really worthwhile. And
yeah, the sponsors loved it.
Experience.
The sponsors loved it because it allowed them to be at two places at once. Right, because they could be at the booth and they could also be in here virtually and get talks like that. And
yeah.
Hey, guess what? It's raining in California. It's actually raining right now. Just a little news weather thing. Okay, but I think that's all I have for this. Josh, did you have questions?
Yeah, there was one question from Scott that who asked if there were any accessibility features for the here on GatherTown.
That's a good question, and unfortunately I don't believe that the Gather space is really set up for accessibility. However, we have our portal allows you to bypass any of the actual having to run through the space to watch the videos that are presented. And we do have a Discord channel, and we do have other methods of communication. But I'm not sure the GatherTown is really set up for that.
I mean, I can add that there is, you can enable live captioning tools. So I think that certainly for hearing impaired, there's a little bit of help there. I don't, with sight impaired, I would say that there are ways to do larger magnifications and turn on more information like icons and hovering over names. So I would recommend, I can pop in some of the links on the Gather site that do have information on how there's some accessibility kind of best practices in building out spaces and what you can do through the console.
Amazing. Cool. And that's really it for questions. So yeah, as they were saying, the conference is the 14th through the 16th. In-person tickets are sold out, so but you can still buy an online ticket. Visit audio.dev for more information, and I'll be sure to put the link in the chat as well for you.
Josh, that's amazing. And I'll do one last plug for your audience. Diversity, inclusion, accessibility, these are all incredibly important themes for the organizers, the sponsors, attendees. I encourage everyone to check out our work on diversity. I bring this up because this year has been an incredibly generous year from our sponsors supporting all the diversity initiatives. And so much so that we now have extra money to assign more online diversity tickets. So if you are interested in this, go to audio.dev/diversity. There's a link on there to apply for one of those tickets. It just takes you to a Google form. Give us some information. We'll reach out and claim a diversity online ticket.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Bobby and Ralph.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank you very much.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing both of you in London.
Yeah, and thanks for sponsoring. We love having TAP there, so that's awesome.
Yeah, heck yeah, glad to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Cool. So yes, be sure to join. Hope to see some of you in London for the conference, and if not, then we'll definitely catch up online in Gathertown. So with that, we will go ahead and segue into our third talk, which is going to be more of a technical talk, and it's about something that all of us should know as developers, which is debugging. And Aaron and I actually have a funny story about this. We did a really comprehensive debugging video about a year ago, and
this is take two. That's all they need to know.
Yeah, and it was really exciting, and I knew that loads of people were going to get into it, and then I accidentally deleted the video, so I never saw the light of day. So
it happened.
But yeah, Aaron and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and he's a very experienced developer. He's done work for Facebook. He's done work for several companies. He also has his own company called Stagecraft, where he develops plugins in Juice and C++. And today he's going to give us a whistle-stop tour of debugging. So there are several parts of this discussion that could be talks within themselves that could take several hours or even days to go through all the different considerations. But he's just going to give us a general overview of some general tips that you should know as a developer. And I will hand it over to Aaron to go ahead and fire away.
That's what I was going to say. Josh, I think when we did that first one too, we were both like, didn't have jobs, didn't have anything to do. I think we talked for like 3 hours. So you would have had too much editing to do anyway. So it's better that we do. Now I'm constrained to like an hour on this one. That's why it's really going to have to be a whistle-stop tour.
Fantastic. Cool. So where would you like to start, Aaron?
Well, so let me share my screen first. Hey, if I come to that ADC in person, by the way, and there's not a rooftop poker game and disco, I'm going to be disappointed.
You'd be surprised. There's karaoke, there is an open mic, there is a quiz night, and there is potential for electronic music jamming next year. So.
Oh, I like it. I like the electronic music jam. It looks like I updated Zoom when we started this, and I got to allow it to, and I got to quit and reopen. I will be right back.
Okay, cool. So I guess, all right, I'm going to freestyle here. and just tell you about some other things that are happening. Once again, as I mentioned before, Cycling 74 have been making a big announcement about something they've been working on for quite a few years, at least 5 years from my knowledge, and that's called Project Rainbow, which enables you to take a Max MSP project and export it to VST/AU formats. It allows you to export it to WebAssembly, so you can put it on a web page. You can take it and put it on a Raspberry Pi, and you can also take it and just and actually export it to C++ code within a Juice project. So you can develop all of your DSP within Max MSP itself, and then hit a button and it'll just export it. It'll open up a Juice project, create a new project for you, and you'll be able to create your UI in Juice. And so this is a really exciting opportunity to help even more people get into audio software development. And we will have one of the first tutorials on Rainbow that will be debuting tomorrow. And this is in collaboration with Music Hackspace. And along with that, we're going to be doing a workshop where certified trainers in Max MSP will be able to help you learn the ropes of Rainbow and get started. So be sure to stay tuned tomorrow for that. And with that, I will pass it over to Aaron. You're back
There you
again.
go. Yeah, gone for just a second. RNBO, Rainbow, this is what you were talking about, right?
That's right. Yeah.
On the screen there. Yeah, I hadn't heard of this until you started talking either, but it does look really interesting. I think it's going to put some of us out of jobs.
Yeah.
It might. Okay, let's dive into debugging. We got about an hour. Like you mentioned a couple times, I'm not going to hit on everything, and you can feel free to interrupt me, Josh. We can kind of go back and forth on this because I don't have a formatted presentation. I was sitting around last night and I made this list here of just general topics that we could discuss, right?
Mhm.
So I've been 25 years or so, I've been a code writer professionally, and about maybe 17 of those have been juice and audio related. And 10 years ago, I would find myself way too often, the code base was getting larger, and I would find myself way too often staring at a computer screen, like 6 hours in, trying to figure out where a certain bug was occurring, and realizing that I wasn't good at navigating my own code, and I didn't have as good an understanding as I should have to the tools available for debugging, and how to quickly navigate through the code and figure out what part of the code is causing the issue that you're seeing, right? So it's something I've gotten a lot better at, and I started thinking a while ago, like, well, what would I tell myself, 15 years ago, if I was just starting out writing code, about how to like grow that code base and not have it become a mess, not have it become spaghetti code, not have it become where you're chasing down every little rabbit hole to figure out what in the code is messing with you. So this is not meant to be any kind of an exhaustive list. I'm not a deep expert on all the debugging tools that are out there. There's a number here that we're not going to talk about. And of course, every IDE is a little different. Every environment's a little different. So it's, like I say, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's a set of conversations, some of which are general enough that I think they bear on all of our work. No matter what you're doing, you're going to deal with stack traces and breakpoints and deadlocks and things like that. But then some of which are a lot more specific as well. So this is broken down into 4 parts. And the way I'm going to do it is do a very quick kind of lightning version, go through this in hopefully 10 minutes or so. And then we're going to go back, go through the same stuff, but slower, look at some code, look at some examples, talk back and forth a little bit about it. If that works for everybody. So the 4 major parts here are sort of the basic stuff that we would come up with, the kind of less basic but core understandings around how to debug, and then some thoughts on like code management and what you need to do when your code base gets bigger to not lose a bunch of pieces and have it get too outdated. And then some unconventional debugging, some other things that you should think about as ways to debug that people don't usually think about. So the basics that I imagine most people here already know, but we can talk about this a little bit or a lot. are things like breakpoints, the stack trace, how to step through the code, how to use asserts and debug output, and maybe how to use preprocessor definitions as well to make sure that to kind of shuttle the debugging engine a little bit. There's a few other things that could have been on here, like watch variables and things like that. But again, it's not meant to be an exhaustive list. The really important thing here is the stack trace, which everybody just needs to have a very good understanding of if you're going to quickly figure out what part of the code is causing an issue. So we're going to come back, talk fairly quickly about just what that is and how to navigate around a stack trace. A little less basic then, when you talk to somebody about the really hard problems you face when you're trying to debug stuff, most of them revolve around threads, right? So we have multiple threads all accessing some of the same data objects, and theoretically they should all be locking at the right times and kind of not messing with each other, but there are 3 or 4 really common ways that threads can mess each other up. So we're going to look at some multi-thread examples and how we can sniff out which thread's causing an issue, how to properly debug when you're dealing with 5 or 6 threads, things not happening on the message thread, etc. Some other less basic things, there are DAW-specific debugging you'll sometimes run into. Somebody will email you and they'll say, hey, look, if I'm using your plugin as a VST2 on Windows 7 with Sequoia, it breaks. And you scratch your head and think, well, I don't have Windows 7 or Sequoia, but how can I go about debugging that, and what you maybe need to know about from DAW to DAW, how much some of these things can vary. Finally, in there, I also have release-only bugs. These are very, very rare, but there's a way that you can have a bug that only shows up in release and not in debug. So we'll talk about that. Okay, the code management, and this is kind of dear to my heart because I think about this a lot as I move through my code. And I'm not here to tell anyone this is the sort of style that you should adopt, but I think it's very important that all of us have a sense of our own style and what conventions we want to adopt. So I'm going to kind of just share with you here some of the ones that I have done for breadcrumbing, so that you can see what you did, so that you can see what the code's doing, so that your comments all make sense to you, so that you don't get into a piece of code and a situation, which I've been in plenty of times, where you're looking at it going why did I do this? What is this variable? What's going on here? And so that you also have some sense of which parts of my code am I maybe still testing? Which parts of my code do I have a lot of to-dos? A lot of things that I need to flesh out. So all of that's very important. Dry programming kind of starts to bear here. You want to make sure you don't repeat yourself, right? Which is what dry stands for. And then comments, where you want to put comments. And then finally, when you want to override, when you want to subclass, and when you want to use inheritance or composition. I put this under code management, but a lot of people would think either that this is a settled debate or it's an ongoing debate. I think of it as a stylistic thing because there are people that still prefer inheritance to composition, and there's a lot of gray area on where you would use one versus the other. Okay, unconventional debugging. This is a shout out to Juice, the first one there. Set application crash handler is insanely useful once you start distributing your plugin, because you can use it to print out a stack trace and email it to yourself, so that if someone on the other side of the world crashes your plugin, it can send you, next time the plugin starts up, it can send you a report, which is a good way to kind of make sure that the long tail of distribution is working out reasonably well. And then finally, custom debug UI. Once you get to a certain point where your code base is big enough, it starts making a lot of sense to build out your own UI that is not for the users, right? Some part of your UI that is for fine tuning, some part of your UI that gives you a your own custom debug, whether it's graphs or a visualization of something you can't easily see otherwise, or printing out some variables. All that sort of stuff can be best done with your own custom UI sometimes. And then finally, audio as a debug output. Nobody ever thinks about this, but if we're all making audio plugins. This is going to be an audio plugin centric talk, and the audio stream itself can be used for data, can be used for output. So there's times when you're doing something complicated and you think, you know what, I don't need 2 channels of data. I'm going to take the right channel and I'm going to replace it with, some sort of data, some sort of output debug stream. So I'm going to show you an example of that and talk about when that is useful. We good so far, Josh? I'm gonna make him make him unmute. All right, cool. So I'm going to go back, go through these examples for you. We're going to look at some code. I'm just going to muse to myself about all this stuff, but Josh, jump in if anything's not clear.
Great.
And then hopefully we can get to questions a little early, but we shall see. Okay, so going all the way back to the basics, we're going to talk about what a stack trace is, a little bit about what breakpoints are, though that's not as much. Doing the thing you should never do. I'm going to do the code live. Okay, so this morning I just coded a couple quick examples. This is the kind of easiest crash I could come up with quickly, which is declare a naked pointer, uninitialized, and then try to use it, right? This sort of thing used to be a lot more common than it is now, because now we have all these fancy unique pointers and scoped pointers and shared resources and shared pointers and all that stuff, which I encourage everyone to use. So you don't do this. You want to avoid, pointer to object as much as you can. But that said, we're going to see what it looks like when we quickly crash this code. I think I'm going to have to drag. Yeah, it's going to be on the wrong monitor. Okay, so this is one of my plugins called Scratch Track. This is used for Scratch turntablism, something Josh knows about. And I added a nice nifty button here that says crash on it. And when I press this, the whole thing crashes. Oh, it did not give me the, yeah, let's put a breakpoint here and do that again. Crashed so hard it didn't even bother to give me the trace. Give me a second. When you get a crash, typically if you're running in debug mode, what you'll see is the stack trace. So it'll pause execution and it'll say, yo, there's a problem, and you're going to be looking at this stack. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about quickly here. No, we'll just not do that. I'm sure it's debugged. Yeah, there it is.
Did not crash.
It crashed and it didn't give me a stack trace.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Well, maybe we can figure this out in real time. If not, we'll just pause execution and look at the stack trace.
Yeah. Maybe that might be quicker, but just to give people a general idea, but can you, while you're doing that, can you just tell while you're coding, can you describe to people what a stack trace actually is?
Of course. So a stack trace, let's use an analogy. Let's assume that the program here is like a factory, and something broke in this factory. So you have a factory with many floors and machines, and something broke way up there. If someone finds that there's a broken thing and they leave a note for you and it says the wheel broke, that's not going to be very helpful, right? That is too specific of context. What you need is the wheel broke in machine number 4 on floor number 3, etc. So you can think of it as like compartments of specificity. The stack trace is a pause in program execution that goes all the way up or down from the most general being the factory is running, all the way down to like wheel number 4 on widget number 6 just broke, right? So we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to look at a preference just to make sure. Yeah, that's the right place. I don't imagine Zoom is should be fine to share the audio device.
Yeah.
Let's take that too. Yeah, this one's using Core. They're both using same audio device, but I don't think that should cause an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, well here, it's running, so we're just going to pause rather than trying the crash button for now. Okay, so we just paused. Here is a list of all the threads, okay? To use our factory analogy, this would be all the workers in the factory, right? So there's, within the process, which is Ableton, there might be a million things going on at once. There's different threads executing. And if two of those threads use the same piece of memory at the same time, you can get into trouble. That's broadly, that's what the threading issues are. But here's our stack trace. Once we pause, we can take a look at everything that Ableton is doing right now, right? The main thread, which is the one that controls the UI and everything else, is not doing anything. It's running a callback, waiting, going to deliver a message if anything comes its way. All the way down to, here's our audio threads. We're loading the URL. Here's our OpenGL is rendering on this thread. Now I'm going to hit play and try one more time, see if this will properly crash for me. Breakpoints is another basic component we want to talk about. So this is a breakpoint. It's same thing in Visual Studio or C-Line or any of the other IDEs. You can put a little flag where you tell the program, look, if you get to this point, I want you to stop. And stop means pause, and we're going to look at the stack trace, right? So if it gets to this point, it should stop. Let's see if it does, or if it just crashes on me. Yeah, it just, oh, no, there we go. Good. So here we are, button clicked. It's right here, trying to stop, right? And it's going to crash. I'm not going to hit continue just in case it messes up. So like I said, this is one of the simpler crashes you can think of. We've created this object. We're going to try to access the object, but we can't because it doesn't actually exist. So it's going to crash. So stepping through the code is another important thing to understand, right? These buttons down here, it's called step over, I think. Yeah, step over, which makes it sound like it's not going to execute whatever's under it. But it should be like step through, you could think of it as. When you hit step over, it's going to try to execute this, and then it's going to, in our case, crash, right? Yeah, and it shouldn't have destroyed, shouldn't have closed out, but it did. Okay, let's turn that one off and go to the next one and see if it does the same thing. But the idea is that most problems can be found by, if you have a general area that you know that the problem is occurring, you put a breakpoint and you step through and see what happens. At some point, either it will crash or something will be in a state that you should be able to notice is wrong. You can hover on all of these while it's running. You can hover over any of these objects and you can explore them. You can see what the value is. You can see what the pointer is pointing to. So you can usually kind of sniff it out that way. Just find what's wrong. Start this up by walking through the code. And that's the most kind of rudimentary first thing you learn to do when debugging usually. And it's something we all should be good at. Okay, let's try this.
Yeah, so while he's doing that, I'll just explain a little bit further. So the breakpoint, so what a breakpoint does is it actually takes your code and actually pauses it in place. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to be able to look at the state of your different variables. So what the values of those different variables are at a given point in time. Look and see if pointers that you may have declared have been allocated, or if they're not allocated anymore. And And also, and when he's doing that process known as step over, what he's doing there is he's actually just pushing the line one line forward. So he's just executing the next line of code. And that's useful. So you can see that as your once you've paused the code in a certain place, you can step through it step by step to see how your different variables change over time, and see where a particular problem may lie. That gets very specific down to one line of code.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to jump now to a simple thread related issue, and we're going to talk a little bit about threads and look again at the stack trace with this one, assuming this gives me love. And it does slow down when you're doing Zoom as well, huh? Okay. So every once in a while, somebody will write to you too, and they'll say, hey, it crashes my computer. And you'll say, oh, it crashes your computer, like the computer restarts? And they'll say, no, the computer doesn't restart. And you'll say, oh, the DAW stops? And they'll say, no, the DAW doesn't stop. It just freezes up, right? If something freezes up, that's usually an indication that you have this kind of problem, right? So I think you can see my cursor, got the spinning wheel of death. But if I click, nothing happens, right? Everything is frozen. So let's just, now in this case, the IDE won't stop. You haven't hit a breakpoint. It's not going to stop because it doesn't know anything's wrong. But I'm going to go ahead and pause. So this is just as if we'd hit a breakpoint to say, what are you doing, computer? And if we look quickly, the first thing we can notice, what's our main message thread, right? The thread that's in charge of all the UI and everything else is right now sleeping. Juice thread sleep. It is sleeping because a button was clicked, which is, there's an infinite loop that's just sleeping, right? The importance of this is that we have two threads going on, and this one is locking, and then it's doing a task that'll never complete. So if you have a couple of threads, your audio threads going, other threads going, and one of those threads gets in a situation where it's just spinning and nothing else is happening, you will usually see an effect, a different kind of effect depending on what thread. In this case, since it's the main thread, nothing renders, right? Nothing's happening. You get the same effect, by the way, if you just comment out all of this and you enter the lock without exiting the lock. Okay, so we should talk about what these are. When you have multiple threads, where's our audio? When you have multiple threads, they can access the same part of memory, right? And you can have an issue like this, which is called a deadlock, where both threads are trying to get the lock, right? So in this case, if we get this, I should back up. This is the audio processor, and we're getting a callback lock. So I'm getting a lock that the audio processor needs in order to do the DSP work. If I grab that lock, I stop it from doing anything with the audio, right? Which is a critical problem because you never want to do that with the audio thread. The audio thread's high priority. We don't want to be grabbing that lock in most cases because you're going to slow down the audio, you're going to get clicks and everything else. But if we grab that lock and then exit or do an unsolvable task like we were just doing, you'll see it freeze up. And then you're going to look through these stacks and see if two of them are maybe doing the same thing. Two of them are fighting over a lock, right? That's called a deadlock. There it is. Okay, so Juice VST3 component, process audio, is trying to grab the plugin instant callback lock, right? Which is the same thing that we're grabbing just by pushing this button. There she is.
My dog has something to say about that.
So locks are an important thing on their own to understand and to think about. This is old syntax, this like enter the lock, exit the lock. You don't actually want to be doing that. There's a really great Juice class called scoped lock, where if you grab a scoped lock, it will automatically exit whenever it leaves, right? So you don't have to worry about, well, what if I forget to exit, right? Because it's too easy to do this. It's too easy to enter a lock. Now I need to do something. And I'm going to do this thing over and over and over. oh, but there's this one case where if this thing is true, I'm going to return, right? And you all see the problem with this is that I forgot to unlock, right? So if we have a large function that's doing a dozen different things, and 99% of the time it goes all the way through and it unlocks and it leaves, great. But 1% of the time it gets halfway down and it says, oh, I can't finish the task today, and it leaves without unlocking, then you've got a deadlock. You've got a lock that's been taken by a thread, and then the lock's been thrown out or held onto or something like that. I think that makes sense. This, by the way, is the simplest kind of multi-threading problem to debug, right? It always does the same thing. You're just spinning wheel of death, and all you have to do is look through all of your threads and find out that, like, oh, 2 of them are both trying to access the same lock. So going a little further than that, here's a harder one to find. And this is the simplest version of this harder one to find. But there's all kinds of thread concurrency issues, right? Which, or let's just even use a broader word and just say thread access issues. Too often you have 2 threads that are both using the same object, right? To go back to our factory analogy, it's like if the manager told 2 different people to fix a machine, and these 2 people don't necessarily play well together, they don't have a good routine for how they work together. So what they do is they both go up there and just try to do their own thing. And one guy's tearing apart the front end of the machine, one person's doing something else on the back side of the machine, and they get in each other's way, right? You don't generally want that. You want one person at a time, one thread at a time in your code working on objects. So first of all, we just need to avoid, be very careful with what objects are owning, what objects are how they're owned, and what accesses them. So you don't necessarily want a bunch of public variables. This is one of the reasons we don't put public variables in our classes. If you have a bunch of public variables, it's too easy for any thread to access that variable and mess with it. Okay, let's try this crash again. Now this time, we're going to get a similar thing with a, oops, closed it. Going to get a similar thing with a threading issue, but it's for a different reason. So let me just make sure it works and we'll talk about that. Okay, so this time we said, hey, I hit a crash button, it did this thing, and all of a sudden the stack traces popped up and said, hey, I'm having trouble getting the length of a path, right? How did this happen? Well, in our process block, this is the DSP, so this is the audio thread. In there, I am trying to read a path, right? I have a juice object path. It's just a line with dots, and I'm going to read it. I just want to know how long it is. All good. The problem is I've got another thread, which is building that path, right? So think for a moment about how often we want to display an audio waveform or something like that. The audio waveform, this is an array of points that we're going to draw somewhere on our UI. If that is being constructed on one thread, but that audio is being used in the audio core, in the audio on the audio thread, you can easily have this kind of problem where one thread has destroyed the object, is right into the object, is creating something with the object, and the other thread is not, is trying to read it, right? Even fairly simple objects this can happen with. If you have an array, or if you have a pointer and it's being redirected, certainly this can happen. Most, floats and things like that are what's called atomic, so you don't have to worry about it. But fairly simple objects can still have this kind of access issue. You can't have one thread writing and one thread reading, because in the middle of a write operation, the read operation could kick in and try to read something that's only half written. And it gets, garbage code. It gets a bunch of ones and zeros that don't make sense. It gets a pointer that points it to the wrong place, and you get a crash. So in this case, it's going to be something exactly like that. So here's our stack trace again, where the top level being that the mouse is doing something. The mouse is clicking a component. mouse up has happened internally. It sends a message. We're on the message thread, so it pushes right through to this. The button was clicked, and then the button being clicked is making a path. And currently, I'm adding, this section of the path. So all of this was successfully done. This was done. This was done. This was done. And then here, it blew up, right? What's I? 551. So why do I have this while here? Because you can usually get away with this, right? That's the problem. That's what makes these so hard to find, is that if I had only done this once, probably would have been fine. Everything would have been fine, right? Just like if I'm writing the audio data over here in the audio thread and I'm trying to read it over here in the UI thread, it's going to be fine. Most of the time, it's going to be fine. One time out of 100, though, or one time out of 1,000, or just on this one guy's machine because of the threading being a little bit different on that machine, or just on Windows 10, you can get these funny issues. So this is what makes, when somebody emails you and they're like, hey, your plugin's not working in this very specific instance. And then you go and you replicate that instance and you go, it's working fine, and you're pulling your hair out because you think this is hard science. It should work the same on his computer as it does on my computer. Here's when it doesn't, right? Is multi-threading issues. If you have two threads accessing the same thing, the timing can be completely different depending on what machine you're on. So here I tell it to do this 1,000 times, because at 550 times, it made the path over here, read the path over here, made the path over here, read the path over here, and it was fine. The 551st time, they didn't line up right, and so it crashes. So that, in a nutshell, is a very simple example of this sort of threading issue. Ways you can debug this sort of thing: when somebody emails you and they're like, hey, this is crashing and we don't know why, and you know that it's not crashing on your computer, it gets very tough. You can, first of all, you can just be more cautious. You can back up and put locks around things, if you have an idea what object you think is causing it. Secondly, you can kind of test the access to these things. You can, instead of doing a lock, you can print from several different threads. So I have 4 different threads that are all accessing this object. I'm going to print out every time it's accessed on these different threads. And then I'm going to look at that printout and see who's accessing it, when and why, and kind of go through it line by line. And that can take a long time too. So this is where you end up shooting in the dark a little bit, and you have to find, work on a hunch, basically, and then back up some locks or change what you're accessing, how you're accessing it. The best thing you can do is just not, make sure all your objects are thread safe. If you have 2 threads that need to access the same object, it should be a thread safe object. And we don't have enough time to go deep into what that means. There's things like lock-free queues, there's atomic objects, but learn what those are, make sure you're using them correctly, and be careful about how you access data that's in one thread, how you access it from another thread. So I hope that's all clear. How are we on time? Oh, we're getting there. Okay. That should be it for multi-threading. We can talk, we can go deeper on that, but let me show you just a couple other quick things. You good, Josh? Not putting you to sleep?
Oh no, this is fascinating.
Okay. While I'm bringing this other thing up, let's talk a little bit about code hygiene. You'll notice for this demo today, I put comments, Aaron demo, everywhere that there's a demo, right? Had to alter like 4 or 5 places. So this is just, I don't want to get lost. I want to delete all this stuff after this call. You should be doing something like that, or you should think up what sort of scheme you want for your code base, just in terms of, I call them breadcrumbs, right? Things that remind you what you were doing when you were altering a piece of code, right? So I have Aaron test, right? Here's all the places where I'm actively testing some part of the code. Some place that I'm like, well, I don't know if this works properly. I need to put this in here. If I later get a crash and I find myself in this piece of code, that tells me like, oh yeah, I was testing this. I better, fix this up. I also have, I think I use temp a lot. Let me look. Yeah. So here's a bunch of temporary. So at some point I was going about my daily business. I came across this class and I was like, man, I don't know if I use this. I don't think I use this anywhere. Maybe I should deprecate it, but I don't want to do it right now because I might mess myself up. So I'm going to make a note. These sorts of notes are incredibly helpful as your code base grows, especially if you have multiple products relying on the same code base. So that you have certain classes that if you alter it, it's going to change it in 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 different products. You should have a lot of these sorts of notes so that if you change something in one place, you'll see a note later if it's affecting another place badly. I think I have a bunch for deprecating. Yeah. So here's a bunch of things that just need to go away as well that just hasn't happened. Real quick on comments. There's 2 things that everybody should do more of. I mean, they will just tell you this in college when you're getting your computer science degree. You need a lot of comments and assertions are always good, real-time assertions. So let's do search for one. Assertions are these kinds of things, right? I am, wherever I am in my code, currently it looks like I am creating this scratch track processor. And I want to make sure that the last setting I got, last parameter is a setting parameter. I don't know what that means. I know what that means, but you don't need to know what that means for the point here. The point is that assertions like this cost you nothing, right? When this compiles and release, these don't execute. They only execute in debug mode. So this is a real-time check for everything you do. You get partway through rendering something and you think, it should really be, under 1. The value of this thing should be less than 1. Put in an assertion that says, assert this thing is less than 1. If you think that there's any chance it's not. The reason for this is you'll catch lots and lots and lots of errors this way. Things that you thought were bulletproof, but you put in a couple assertions, and all of a sudden, in a slightly different situation, you've thoroughly tested it, but in a slightly different situation, an assertion pops up and tells you, whoops, something didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, right? Real-time assertions are a valuable tool. You should put them everywhere. The other thing that I use a lot of, and some people will tell you, you shouldn't, well, comments first, we didn't talk about, and then debug outputs. Comments, I do a lot of comments, and the way that I like to do them is putting action verbs first, right? So that I can go through it quickly and I can say, okay, I'm going to override something, then I'm going to output something, I'm going to do something with MIDI, then I'm going to process these things. Down here, I'm going to check something, right? This sort of thing so that you can go through quickly and you should be able to read your comments and know exactly what the code's doing. That way, when you come back to this code, when there's a problem 4 years from now, you don't look at it and go, oh, what was I doing? What is this doing, right? Always, write what it's going to do and then block of code. Write what it's going to do, block of code. I find that very, very helpful. I didn't do it for many, many years, and it nipped me in the butt a million times, and I'm getting better at it. Debug outputs. You notice, I'm sure you've been watching down here, I use quite a lot of debug outputs. Not everybody agrees you should do that. A lot of this, again, it's only going to happen in debug, so it doesn't matter in terms of performance, but it's clutter, right? So if you can output everything that's going on with the code, and then when you're looking through it, the execution, you can say, oh, this happened, then this happened, and make sure, it gives you a kind of a sanity check. Or you can output nothing, and then occasionally output, just what you're currently testing. It's easy to use macros to shut these things off. So I won't demo it for time, but here, like this. There's this class that interfaces with an API. So it does a whole lot of like pinging a web server and stuff like that, which tends to clog up my output. So if I'm debugging something that has nothing to do with that, I want to be able to shut off those debug statements. Easy to do. In this case, I just override just for this file. This is a CPP file. So there's a definition at the top of it that just for this file is going to override debug temporarily so that it doesn't actually output anything. So this won't happen, right? Because it's defined locally to not do anything. The usefulness of that is that I could now take this definition, I can put it in a settings file somewhere. And then when I'm debugging the API, I can go 1, resave, recompile, and I'll be viewing the output related to the API, but not the other stuff, right? So if you're a person like me that likes to do a lot of debug output, you can do this to silo it. So you're just viewing relevant debug output. I hope that made sense. Josh, you with me? That's all the, that's most of the like code management, high level, like you're growing your code base. Here's some like tips on code cleanliness, shall we say. Got anything to add?
No, you pretty much covered it all.
Oh, I'm sure I didn't do that. I'm sure there's lots more, but we're going to move on. So I want to show you real quick two sort of less conventional ways to debug that people don't really think about very often. And then we'll just kind of open it up and see what people want to talk about or what I skipped or what could use more clarity. Just give it a second to start up. Oh, that's why. Oh, did you see that? That's why we're having trouble. Mac hard drive out of space. Okay, well, this is the small computer. That does tend to happen.
That's problematic.
It is, but it's not surprising. Give me one quick second. I think I can find something large that I can delete, like these videos, which I do not need. Yeah, I got 2 of these, but I like this old computer for certain things. But then it does end up full. I don't think I've emptied that in a while, huh? Okay, rebuild. How do I have 50,000 items in my trash? That's unreal. Who am I to talk about cleanliness? Okay. Here comes Ableton. So the 2 ways we're going to talk about are how to build your own debug UI and when that's useful, and how to use the audio stream as output and when that's useful. So I'm going to do it real quick. So here's this thing again. I have a special area here where I've built it out to the point now that it knows I'm an admin, so that normal users don't have this admin menu, but I do, and it's got all these special things I can test and do and whatever else. So it's kind of a custom testing suite. So here for this plugin, we have this debug output, which does 2 things. This is the scratch tool, which means it resamples on the fly. Resampling can be pretty complicated. You can get all kinds of issues at the borders. So at some point I realized, well, I can't figure out how to debug this really well. Doing it this way and drawing my own curves, I'm able to get a really good look at it. General rule is if you can't, things become a lot easier to debug when you can see them. There are many, many, many things, data streams and everything else that something's not working correctly. And if you think about it, you're not looking at it in any sort of detail the way you'd like to. So you need to, back up and say, what do I need to build so that I can really see this problem, right? If it's something that you can hear in the audio stream, it can be really helpful to also see it. If it's not, if it's something, in the data, you have a massive database, you have a value tree, you have all this other stuff, then maybe build something where you just view the value tree, right? Where you can collapse and uncollapse the values and look around and, oh, that value is not what it's supposed to be, that sort of thing. To a degree, you can do this just by pausing execution, but a lot of times that's not ideal. So this ends up being better. Oh yeah, look at that. It also, yeah. I think I also had, here also is the crossfader on there. which the mouse is a horrible piece of input for this, because you get a very choppy, there you go, very choppy signal. So maybe I want to add smoothing to that, right? Except I don't, but in some cases you can look at it and it can give you a better sense of your signal. Since we're dealing with audio debugging, another thing that can happen, you've got some clicks. Your audio plugin, whatever it's doing, has these weird clicks. Every once in a while it clicks and I don't know what's happening and I need to see it. And maybe you get to the point where you look at it in the DAW. So you're playing your synth or you're running your reverb or whatever, and you can see the nonlinearity, right? You can see a spike where it's not doing what it's supposed to do, but you don't know why, and you don't know what the code is doing at that moment, right? An easy way then to get a good look at what the code is doing at that moment. One is to do your own debug, as we just talked about. The other way is to hijack one of your audio channels, right? So for example, go right down here, example 5. For example, we're gonna right here take the audio output and get rid of, here's channel 1. We're gonna overwrite channel 1 with the frequency. The frequency is, that's the thing we were just looking at. So the play speed or the turntable motion, you would think of it as, and we're gonna put that on in the audio, in the left channel, right channel. Give it 1 second to start up. You guys hear that? Talk about that in a second. Route 1 to 2. Record. I'm just going to quickly record something, and we'll take a look. Okay. So user has hit play. User has scratched back and forth a little bit, and we want to take a look at what is happening. The top channel there is the audio, right? That was just recorded. So in this case, again, if it's a synth, if it's something else, you can now see exactly what it's doing. So because this is a resampler, sometimes when you get close to 0, you'll see all of a sudden, the waveform changes pretty dramatically. Now, in the event that there was an error somewhere, right in here, I could find an error. It would be very easy to go down here and say, well, what is the current frequency doing? Except it actually got some of the other channel too somehow. These spikes, by the way, are for the border. So it's also very helpful sometimes to know exactly where your blocks are, because you can have boundary issues where the first sample in the block or the last sample in the block is the problematic one, because there's a boundary there and you didn't properly remember some state. Mess up a filter, for example, that sort of thing. So yeah, there you go. So you can see this curve here is basically the same curve that we just had previously. I guess it didn't clear some of this data for some reason. And then you're putting a debug stream on the other output so that you can get a really good look at what's going on. This isn't limited to anything really. I could print the current value of pi. You could print the current rotation, the current time. You could have a little timer that does this for every second. So it's really, you should feel unconstrained at the amount of data you can put in there, and it's a enormous because it's sample accurate. And there's so many of them. There's quite a lot you can do when you start thinking about the fact that you can use this as a debuggable output, as a valuable data stream. Oh, that's why it's also recording this. All right. So that's that. Those are the last 2 examples. I'm going to pull the, come on back with me, Josh, and I'm going to pull up the outline to see what I might have missed.
Great. Well, while you're doing that, we have a question from Akash. Hey, Akash, It says, great stuff, Aaron. How do you deal with a customer who sends you a crash report since they're using a release build with no debug signals? The crash report doesn't contain a lot of detail.
Yeah, so I cheat. I leave the debug symbols in on Mac. I don't do that on Windows because it's very hard. The professional way to do this, though, is to do something called d-symbol location, which is you keep the, what's it called, the manifest file or something. Every time you do a release build, right next to it, there's a thing that maps all the symbols, that tells you where all the symbols are in the code. So what you're supposed to do is take the stack trace that's been sent back to you, reverse, d-symbol locate it, and then that just decodes it back to the actual readable stack trace. So good question. If you're not too worried about hackers looking at your code, you can also just leave the symbols in there, but it's not advised.
Great.
What else you got?
That's the only question that we really have. I was the only other thing that I thought, I'm not sure if you use this at all. Do you use GDB or LLDB or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, those are two different compilers. I'd have to look which is the standard now, is the LLDB, I think.
LLDBs for Xcode.
Yeah. Which it's I mean, I switched right when GDB switched, so I've used both, but I haven't given a lot of thought to comparative advantages or anything else. I know there's a debate out there about that.
Okay. Well, I guess what I mean is maybe just letting people know what it is in general.
Well, sounds like you got a better handle on it than I do. Why don't you explain it?
Yeah, okay. So if you want to pull up Xcode again really quickly.
Yeah.
And just maybe do like a breakpoint. So there's another tool that you can use that a lot of people don't actually know about, which is in Xcode, is called LLDB, which is actually almost a language in itself. And what you can do, I don't actually remember how to like any of the coding conventions or anything.
You're going to talk about putting a command in the console?
Yeah. So what you could do is you can do it's bits of debugging that actually allow you to find out more information if you when you hit a breakpoint or when you hit a crash, and that's really useful sometimes. Another tool that Aaron didn't really cover this one, but is also very useful, is conditional breakpoints as well. So which are where you can actually set a breakpoint that will pause execution. So if you have a for loop that's running and you say that you want to actually pause execution after the for loop has happened 1,000 times, you can actually do conditional for loops. And there's kind of specific syntax that you need to do to be able to be able to do those things. And I'm sure that there are resources on the web. But if you're looking to dig even deeper on debugging, those are two great places to check out.
Yeah, LLDB, I don't use all that much either, which I probably should look at it more. But yeah, when you pause execution, there's a wide variety of things you can do. So you can print out, you can just pause execution and say, what's the value of a certain variable right now? And you can, ask the debugger and it'll print it out for you. Here it shows, I guess you can create new objects and all kinds of stuff. So yes, that is a whole other area. A lot of people also like watch variables. You can, particularly in Microsoft, in Visual Studio, you can tell it that you want to watch a dozen different variables, and it'll just keep those in the debugger at all times, so you can keep an eye on them, which is also something I don't do very much of. So there's, like I said, it's not an exhaustive list, and there's a lot of other takes on this, and there are also a lot of third-party tools, particularly for the thread debugging, that I haven't used very much of, but there are people that swear by them.
Yeah. absolutely. Xcode's, I forget how to access it in Xcode, but if you go back to Xcode again, maybe so in debug, so if you go into the debug menu at the top, so you have like thread sanitize. Another thing that you may want to mention is like thread sanitizer, or maybe it's in
Where are you looking? I don't know what that is.
really.
Yeah, you're blowing my mind.
So if you go into where's product, so maybe if you go into I think if you go into product and then scheme, and then do edit scheme,
Oh.
and then go into diagnostics.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the profiler at all either. Address sanitizer, thread sanitizer requires recompilation.
Yeah, so these are really useful. So
Ah,
yeah, so you have address sanitizer, which is that makes sure that you don't have any somebody's gonna
someone's gonna correct you. It's okay. It's okay.
somebody's gonna give me a correction. But say you have address sanitizer, which ensures that after pointers that the pointers are deallocated and destroyed correctly, then you have undefined behavior sanitizer, which looks out for undefined behavior. Thread sanitizer, which is where it looks for thread racing, what is thread racing conditions?
Yeah.
So those are great to turn on. Those only work, if I remember correctly, in debug mode. So
Yeah, I would hope so.
yeah,
That's cool.
those are really cool as well.
I have not tried either of those, and I'm going to right after this call because now I'm curious.
Oh, you don't know about this? I taught you
No, I
something.
don't. I've never used these. I would hope they're new, but maybe I just haven't noticed them for 15 years.
No, they've been out. Yeah, they're great. They're great, and they're really a pain because they're very strict, but they're very useful.
There's also, and we would be remiss if we didn't note that Juice has a fair number of like safeguards too. First of all, there's a lot of assertions in Juice, which is helpful because you'll be going about your business and suddenly there'll be an assertion in Juice. You know, Juice will pop up and say, if you hit this assertion, it's because you didn't, and you have to change something. And then they also have a lot of memory leak detection. So most objects have a little macro at the bottom of them that says like declare something with memory leak protection, and then whenever everything is destroyed at the end, everything is deallocated. If you have leaked, if you have not destroyed something, Juice does a really good job letting you know.
Yeah, cool. I think that's everything. Yeah, James had a great comment. He said this is great talk, this is very useful information. I would have never thought of commandeering a channel of audio, but I'm certainly going to use that going forward.
It's a fun way to do it.
Cool.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks, Josh. This was fun as always.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks everybody else too.
Thanks so much. Oh man, I'm
They
jealous.
sat through it.
I'll be having a cup of coffee. Nice.
It's all good.
Yeah. When there's a coffee in hand, it's always all good.
Yeah.
Cool. So as we said, yeah, if you're going to be at the Audio Developer Conference later on this month, we hope to see you there, whether in person in London or virtually online. And look forward to seeing all of you there. And then for us, our next meetup is going to be on the 13th of December. So it'll be our pre-Christmas special, pre-2023 special. So hope to see you there. And we have some exciting guests coming up, and we will be able to announce those soon. Other than that, that's it. Thanks everybody for tuning in with us, and thank you to the presenters as well. So and with that, we will go ahead and sign off. So hope to see you all next month. And
Bye-bye.
at
Thanks,
ABC.
Josh.
All right.
Stuff. Cheers.
Ciao.
Cool. We're offline. Thanks.